Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into denial of service attacks. We're talking about the kind of massive, coordinated digital assaults that can literally wipe major websites right off the map. So let's start with a story you might actually remember. Back in 2010, when supporters of WikiLeaks wanted to retaliate, they didn't try to steal data or hack into servers. Nope. They just unleashed a digital flood that made these giant financial websites disappear. For a while, you just couldn't reach them. That right there is the signature move of a denial of service attack. Okay, so what is a DOS attack at its core? It's not about theft, it's not about espionage, it's all about one thing: availability. The whole point is to just overwhelm a system, to max out its bandwidth, its memory, whatever critical resource it has, so that nobody who's actually supposed to be there can get in. The best way to think about it is like a massive, intentional traffic jam on a highway. Imagine there's a store you want to go to, but an attacker has sent thousands and thousands of empty cars to completely clog every single road leading to it. You, the legitimate customer, can't get anywhere near it. So yeah, the lights are on at the store, but for all intents and purposes, it is completely shut down. So to really get how these attacks got so sophisticated, we have to go back to the beginning. How did this all start? Well, it started with simple brute force. You know, the first and most basic way to do this is what's called a flooding attack. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a digital fire hose. If an attacker has a bigger internet pipe than their target, they can just point that fire hose at them and turn it on full blast. The target's smaller connection gets totally swamped, and that's it. Nothing else gets in or out. But, you know, there's a huge glaring problem with this simple approach. Every single data packet you send over the internet has a return address. So a simple flood attack points right back to the attacker. It's basically like a burglar leaving their name and address at the crime scene. It didn't take long for them to realize they needed a better way to hide.
And that, of course, led to the first really clever trick in this whole arms race: source address spoofing. Instead of using their real IP address, attackers started just faking it. They'd generate packets with random forged source addresses. All of a sudden, the attack traffic looked like it was coming from everywhere at once, making the real attacker almost impossible to find.
Now, this is where they started to weaponize the internet's own rules against itself. See, a normal connection is like a polite three-step conversation. Your computer says hello, the server says hello back, and your computer says, great, got it. But with a SYN spoof attack, the attacker sends that first hello, but with a fake return address. The server politely says hello back to that fake address, and then it just waits for a response that's never going to arrive. Do that thousands of times, and you fill up the server's entire waiting list with ghosts, completely locking out any real users. Okay, so spoofing makes one attacker hard to find. But what if you could be more than just one attacker? The next huge leap in this arms race was all about scaling up, building a massive, coordinated swarm. This is where we go from DOS to DDoS, distributed denial of service. Because it's one thing to stop a single fire hose, right? It's another thing entirely to try and stop 1,000 faucets all turning on at once.
So how do they build this army? They create what's called a botnet, a huge network of infected computers, often called zombies. And this is where it gets a little spooky, because these zombies are often just regular home computers that have been infected with malware, and the owner has no idea. So, as you see here, a single attacker, the puppet master, sends one command to a few lieutenants, who then pass that order on to this massive army of thousands of agent zombies. And just like that, they all attack the same target at the exact same time.
And with these botnets, the scale of these attacks just exploded. I mean, the power became absolutely terrifying. Take the Spam House attack back in 2013. It hit 300 gigabits per second. To put that in perspective, that's a tidal wave of data so enormous it could knock just about any company and even some core parts of the internet completely offline.
But then, the attackers got even smarter. This is a really clever twist. They realized, hey, why build our own army when we can trick the internet itself into doing the dirty work for us?
This brilliant little technique is called a reflection attack. Here's the genius of it. The attacker sends a small request to some big, powerful, completely innocent server out on the internet, but they spoof the return address to be their victim's address. The server, just doing its job, sends its reply, which is often much larger than the request, not back to the attacker, but it gets reflected straight to the victim. The server becomes an unwitting accomplice in the attack. And they didn't just stop there. They took that reflection idea and made it way, way more powerful. This is called an amplification attack. They started targeting specific types of servers, like DNS servers, which are basically the internet's phone books, that are designed to turn a tiny query into a much bigger response.
And I mean, just look at the numbers here. It's absolutely insane. The attacker sends out this tiny little request. We're talking just 60 bytes, but they craft it just right so that the DNS server sends back a massive 4,000 byte response. And remember, that huge response gets reflected to the victim. That gives the attacker a 65-to-1 amplification on their attack. They get all that extra firepower for free.
Okay, so at this point, you're probably thinking, how on earth do you even begin to fight back against this? It sounds almost impossible, right? Well, the security world has a strategy. It's a multi-layered defense.
It's really broken down into 4 key stages, or lines of defense. First, you have prevention. That's all the stuff you do before an attack to make yourself a harder target. Then, during an attack, it's all about detection and filtering, spotting the bad traffic and stopping it in its tracks. After the fact, you move to traceback, the detective work of trying to find out where it came from. And finally, you have reaction, getting back online and figuring out how to be stronger next time.
But out of all of those, what's the one thing, the single most effective defense we have? Well, it's actually really simple, and it takes us right back to the beginning: source address spoofing. If internet service providers would just configure their networks to block packets with fake from addresses from leaving, a huge portion of these attacks would be dead in the water before they could even start.
And all of this kind of leads us to a really big, fundamental question about the internet itself. You see, the internet was originally designed to be a cooperative, trusting place. The whole system was built on the assumption that traffic was legitimate. And in this constant arms race between attackers and defenders, you have to wonder, is that very foundation of trust now the internet's single greatest vulnerability?